Brigitte Gabriel, Arabic, born Hanan Qahwaji, October 21, 1964, is a Lebanese-American conservative author, anti-Islam activist, and founder of the anti-Muslim group ACT. For America, Brigitte Gabriel was born in the Marjian district of Lebanon to a Maronite Christian couple, a first and only child after over 20 years of marriage. She says that during the Lebanese Civil War, Islamic militants launched an assault on a Lebanese military base near her family's house and destroyed her home. Gabriel, who was 10 years old at the time, was injured by shrapnel in the attack. She says that she and her parents were forced to live underground in all that remained, an 8 by 10 foot, 2.4 by 3.0 m, bomb shelter for 7 years, with only a small kerosene heater, no sanitary systems, no electricity or running water, and little food. She says she had to crawl in a roadside ditch to a spring for water to evade Muslim snipers. At one point in the spring of 1978, a bomb explosion caused her and her parents to become trapped in the shelter for 2 days. They were eventually rescued by 3 Christian militia fighters, one of whom befriended Gabriel but was later killed by a landmine. Gabriel wrote that in 1978 a stranger warned her family of an impending attack by the Islamic militias on all Christians. She says that her life was saved when the Israeli army invaded Lebanon in Operation Litani. Later, when her mother was seriously injured and taken to an Israeli hospital, Gabriel was surprised by the humanity shown by the Israelis, in contrast to the constant propaganda against the Jews she saw as a child. She said of her experience, "I was amazed that the Israelis were providing medical treatment to Palestinian and Muslim gunmen. These Palestinians and Muslims were sworn, mortal enemies, dedicated to the destruction of Israel and the slaughter of Jews. Yet, Israeli doctors and nurses worked feverishly to save their lives. Each patient was treated solely according to the nature of his or her injury. The doctor treated my mother before he treated an Israeli soldier lying next to her because her injury was more severe than his. The Israelis did not see religion, political affiliation, or nationality. They saw only people in need, and they helped." After graduating from high school, Gabriel completed a 1-year business administration course at a YWCA in 1984. Using the pseudonym Nurse Aman, Gabriel was a news anchor for World News, an Arabic-language evening news broadcast of Middle East television, which was then run by Pat Robertson's Christian Broadcasting Network to spread his politically conservative, Pentecostal faith in the Middle East. The broadcasts covered Israel, Egypt, Syria, Jordan, and Lebanon. Gabriel reported on the Israeli withdrawal from central Lebanon, the Israeli security zone, occupied South Lebanon, and the Palestinian uprising in the West Bank and Gaza. She moved to Israel before emigrating in 1989 to the United States. In February 2017, Gabriel said that she provided a national security briefing at the White House. She met with aides at the White House in March 2017. Her organization, ACT for America, has been described by the New York Times as drawing on 3 rather religious and partisan streams in American politics: evangelical Christian conservatives, hardline defenders of Israel, both Jews and Christians, and Tea Party Republicans, and as anti-Islamic. According to the Washington Post, the organization touted as its first accomplishment its 2008 campaign to shut down a Minnesota Islamic school. The Southern Poverty Law Center claimed that ACT for America is the largest grassroots anti-Muslim group in the country, and the Council on American Islamic Relations has described it as one of the main sources of growing anti-Muslim bigotry in our nation. According to The Guardian, the organization has been widely identified as anti-Muslim. According to Peter Bionard of The Atlantic, the organization has condemned cities with large Muslim populations for serving halal food in public schools. In 2013, its Houston chapter urged members to protest food companies that certify their meat as compliant with Islamic dietary law. Fact. For America tries to dissuade Jews and Christians from conducting interfaith dialogue with Muslims. And in state after state, it has lobbied state legislatures and school boards to purge textbooks of references that create an inaccurate comparison between Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. According to Lori Goodstein of the New York Times, Gabriel presents a portrait of Islam so thoroughly bent on destruction and domination that it is unrecognizable to those who study or practice the religion. Goodstein says that Gabriel insists that she is singling out only radical Islam or Muslim extremists, not the vast majority of Muslims or their faith. And yet, in her speeches and her 2 books, she leaves the opposite impression. BuzzFeed News described her as the most influential leader in America's increasingly influential anti-Islam lobby. The Washington Post describes her 2 books as alarmist tracts about Islam. Peter Bionart of The Atlantic describes her as America's most prominent anti-Muslim activist. Stephen Lee, a publicist at St. Martin's Press for Gabriel's second book, has called her views extreme, and Deborah Solomon of the New York Times Magazine, who interviewed Gabriel in August 2008, described her as a radical Islamophobe. According to Clark Hoyt from the New York Times, over 250 people wrote in to protest the label in the days that followed. Hussein Ibish, a senior resident scholar at the Arab Gulf States Institute in Washington, said that her agenda is pure unadulterated hatred and that she has a pathological hatred of Muslims and other Arabs. Gabriel disputes the charge, and has said that she does not believe that all Muslims are the problem. In 2009, Gabriel stated Islam promotes intolerance and violence, and that moderate Muslims must organize and engage those enlightened, educated, and westernized Muslims in the community to begin a dialogue to discuss the possibility of reform in Islam just as Christianity and Judaism have been reformed. She says that there is a cancer called Islamofascism that permeates a Muslim world in which extreme is mainstream. In June 2014, Gabriel said that the radicals are estimated to be between 15 to 25% worldwide. In an interview with the Australian Jewish News, she stated that a practicing Muslim who upholds the tenets of the Quran, it's not that simple. A practicing Muslim who goes to mosque every Friday, prays 5 times a day, and who believes that the Quran is the word of God, and who believes that Muhammad is the perfect man in 4 inaudible words is a radical Muslim. When Gabriel was invited to speak as part of a lecture series organized by Duke University's Jewish community in October 2004, many in attendance were angered by her referring to Arabs as barbarians. The Freeman Center for Jewish Life at Duke University later apologized for her comments. Following her speech at a women's campaign event for the Jewish Federation of Ottawa, JFO, in November 2008, many in attendance registered their protests, leading Mitchell Bellman, president and CEO of the JFO, to write a letter in which he acknowledged that Gabriel made unacceptable gross generalizations of Arabs and Muslims, distancing his organization from her views. In 2007 at the Christians United for Israel annual conference, Gabriel delivered a speech that included the following: "The difference, my friends, between Israel and the Arab world is the difference between civilization and barbarism. It's the difference between good and evil." Applause. This is what we're witnessing in the Arabic world. They have no soul. They are dead set on killing and destruction. And in the name of something they call Allah, which is very different from the God we believe. Applause, because our God is the God of love. This speech was characterized by journalist Bruce Wilson as being hate speech and stated that Brigitte Gabriel paints a wide swath of humanity as subhuman, comparing her speech to Goebbels' propaganda. In March 2011, while being interviewed by Elliot Spitzer on CNN, Gabriel defended the speech, saying, "I was talking about how Palestinian mothers are encouraging their children to go out and blow themselves up to smithereens just to kill Christians and Jews. And it was in that context that I contrasted the difference between Israel and the Arabic world was the difference between democracy and barbarism." Regarding the 2-state solution, Gabriel states, "Forcing Israel to accept a 2-state solution is not going to work unless the Palestinians first are forced to clean up their act and eliminate hatred from their school books, teach tolerance to their people, and preach acceptance of Israel and the Jews as a neighbor." In a speech at a conference sponsored by the UN Permanent Mission at Palau and the IAEA's Foundation, Gabriel said that she viewed Israel as the vanguard in the world's fight against Islamic terrorism, equating Israel's fight against Hamas and Hezbollah with the world's fight against the Islamic State. Because they hate, a survivor of Islamic terror warns America, New York City, New York, United States, St. Martin's Press, 2006, ISBN 0-312-35837-7 CS1 maint, ref equals harf, link. They must be stopped. Why we must defeat radical Islam and how we can do it. New York City, New York, United States, St. Martin's Press, 2008, ISBN 978-0-312-38363-3 CS1 maint, ref equals harf, link. Because they hate presentation to the Heritage Foundation. Appearances on C-SPAN.